a machine born of fear, built in the shadows, to fight a war that would never happen. This is the most advanced spacecraft the world forgot. It flew only once, a perfect mission executed by a ghost. And then it was left to rot, like the empire that created it. This is the story of the most useless victory in history. The tragedy of the Soviet space shuttle, the late 1970s. The Cold War was not only fought on Earth, it extended into the infinite vacuum of space. And America, after the dust from the moon landing settled, revealed its new weapon, the space shuttle. To the public, it was a symbol of progress, a bridge to the stars. But in the dark corridors of the Kremlin, generals and spies saw something different. They saw its wings and imagined a re-entry maneuver over Moscow. They saw its cargo bay and imagined Soviet satellites being stolen from orbit. Worse, they imagined a nuclear launch platform, invisible and silent, floating above their heads. Paranoia was a state tool, and fear its fuel. The order, whispered at the highest amphitheaters of power, was absolute. They cannot have the sky to themselves. The Soviet response would not be a competition. It would be a statement, and to make that statement, they would need the enemy's secrets. If this story of secrets and paranoia has already captured you, subscribe to the channel. What the KGB did next rewrote the rules of the space race. The KGB's Directorate T, the Scientific and Technological Espionage Unit, was activated. Its agents were not men with guns, but with brilliant minds, infiltrated into tech companies, universities, and NASA subcontractors. They were not looking for a single blueprint. They were looking for everything. Aerodynamics reports, thermal protection compounds, flight control software. Documents were photographed in hotel rooms, microfilms exchanged in parks. America, proud of its creation, published thousands of pages of research. The KGB devoured every single one. They built a mountain of stolen and public data. And with that mountain, on the desolate steppes of Kazakhstan, in the heart of the Baikonur cosmodrome, they began to build their monster, the Energia-Buran program. They weren't just copying, they were correcting, perfecting. Where the American design had flaws, they redesigned them. Where there was complexity, they sought brute force. First came the beast, the Energia rocket, not a set of boosters attached to a tank, like the Shuttle, but a standalone rocket, the most powerful ever built by man, capable of lifting 100 tons from the Earth, a god of fire and thunder. And its payload was the genius, the Buran, blizzard in Russian, a poetic name for a machine born of war. On the outside, a near-identical twin of the Shuttle, a black and white copy. But inside, it had a different soul. Its main engines were on the Energia rocket, not the spacecraft itself. This made it lighter, safer. Its payload capacity was greater, and most importantly, it could fly alone. America built a ship that needed the world's best pilots. The Soviet Union built one that needed no one. A perfect robot, a silent, obedient genius. The program's cost was astronomical. Billions of rubles were diverted from an already crumbling economy. There was a shortage of food on Moscow shelves, but no shortage of titanium in Baikonur. The question echoing in the halls of power was not, how much does it cost? But do they have one? The pride of a declining superpower was at stake, and they would pay any price. November 15th, 1988, Baikonur Cosmodrome. The scene was apocalyptic. A snowstorm battered the steppe. Winds of almost 80 kilometers per hour blew sideways. Any American mission would have been aborted days before. But Soviet pride was stronger than the weather. Inside the underground control center, cigarette smoke hung in the air. No one spoke. The world was not watching. The broadcast was a state secret. If it failed, the disaster would be buried along with the wreckage. But if it worked, the clock hit zero. Energia awoke for liquid boosters. One central engine, a controlled force of nature. The snow around the launch pad vaporized instantly. The ground trembled, and on top of this pillar of fire, the Buran, silent, empty, cold. Its cabin without astronauts. Its heart, an onboard computer. It rose, not with the grace of a plane, but with the fury of a missile, tearing through the gray sky, a white scar against a storm. It left the Earth behind, and for 206 minutes, it danced in the silence of the vacuum. 2 perfect orbits. Meanwhile, on Earth, the real test was about to begin. The automatic landing system, the jewel in the program's crown. The brain of the silent genius. It had never been used in a real scenario. The ship plunged back into the atmosphere, a flaming brick, at 27,000 kilometers per hour. In the control room, the engineers watched a dot on a screen and held their breath. The Buran survived Now, it was an 80-ton glider, aligning with the landing strip miles away. That's when the alarm sounded. The wind. The storm at Baikonur was pushing the craft off course. For a human pilot, it would be an emergency. A life-or-death decision in a split second. But there was no pilot. The Buran's onboard computer received the wind data, processed, analyzed, and made a decision. Alone. It aborted the original approach. In a sharp, unexpected move, it turned, tilted its wings against the wind. It made a steep bank, a circle in the sky that no engineer had planned. In the control room, there was panic. What is happening? We've lost control. But the machine was not lost. It was thinking. After its unscheduled maneuver, it realigned with the runway. This time, perfectly against the wind, and like a feather. It touched the ground. Its wheels kissed the concrete. A robotic landing, from space, in the middle of a storm. An engineering feat that NASA would take decades to even attempt. The silent genius had done its duty. Robotic perfection, an absolute victory. The machine did the impossible. It proved to be perfect. But what would you do as the chief engineer at that moment? Would you feel pride in the victory or a deep fear for the power you had just created? Leave your theory in the comments. There was euphoria in Baikonur. Hugs, tears, vodka. For a brief, glorious moment they had surpassed the Americans. The Buran was towed to its hangar ke-112, a palace built for a king, but the world it returned to was dying. A year later, the Berlin Wall fell. The Soviet Union, the empire that built it, was disintegrating. There was no money for salaries, for food, for heating. How could they justify billions for a space program whose reason for being, the Cold War, had evaporated? The Energia-Buran program was placed on a temporary hiatus. The Buran, the hero of a single flight, was locked in its hangar. Its siblings, waiting in line to fly, were abandoned in different stages of construction. The promise was made. We will come back for you. It was the cruelest of lies. Years turned into decades. The dust from the Kazakh desert began to accumulate. The white paint began to peel. The hangar became a tomb, a mausoleum for a dream of titanium and ceramic. The engineers left. The guards relaxed their watch. Then, in May 2002, the final blow. The roof of Hangar 112, weakened by neglect and overloaded by tons of unremoved snow, collapsed. The only Buran that had known the glory of space was crushed, destroyed not by the fire of re-entry, but by the weight of oblivion. Today, what remains are ghosts. In another hangar, a few kilometers away, 2 other unfinished Burans continue their vigil. Decaying in the darkness, their windows broken, their cargo bays open, like mouths screaming at a sky they will never reach. Urban explorers and vandals have left their marks on a sacred piece of history. The images are haunting. A melancholic playground for the end of an era. A monument to wasted genius. A victory so expensive, so late, that it served no purpose. The perfect machine, the that fulfilled its mission with a precision no human could match, and was left to die, a victim not of a war against an enemy, but of the collapse of its own creators. The story of Buran is a warning about the fine line between ambition and obsession. If this tale of forgotten giants made you think, subscribe and hit the bell. The next ruin we explore hides an even darker secret. The greatest enemy of an empire is not the other. It is itself.